The topic of this video is upper structure chords, and those are chords that are built above the level of the seventh. In other words, chords that extend above the first octave. We have plenty of experience writing and analyzing chords built up to the seventh, and in a recent chapter, we even studied chords built up to the ninth. Most of those chords were dominant chords, and we discovered that the ninth could be either a major ninth or a flat ninth. Here we're going to take a look at some examples in which the chords can be extended even further, up to the 11th and up to the 13th. Sometimes these pitches are altered a bit, mainly to make them sound good. Notice that in the major 13th chord, it's not unusual to sharp the 11th. One of the reasons that this perhaps sounds a little bit better is because it aligns more closely with the overtone series. Here's an example of a chord built from a minor chord, a minor triad with a minor seventh, and then the ninth, and then the 11th, and then built up to the 13th. Notice again that the choice of pitch for the 13th is a sharp, but composers are certainly free to experiment and write chords that sound right and proper in any given context. And finally, we take a look at a chord that is dominant in quality, that is major minor seventh, but then built to the ninth, and then the 11th, and then the 13th. Here, the choice for the 11th is the F sharp. Again, it's a little bit closer to the overtone series. But you might see variations on any of these upper given pitches. You certainly can build these chords on any pitch level. Here's an example building it up from E flat with a dominant quality seventh chord, and then a ninth, 11th, and 13th. It is quite often the case that a composer will not use every single note, and yet we can still analyze it as a 13th chord. The essential elements would be the root, the third, the seventh, the ninth, and perhaps the 13th. There are plenty of cases where a composer would leave out the 11th, and we would still call it a 13th chord because it seemed obviously that the chord was built up and structured in such a way that the thirds piled up all the way to the 13th. Let's take a look at a few pieces of music. Here's Waltz No. 1 from Les Valses Nobles et Sentimentales by Ravels. And in this piece, he's using many upper structure chords. Some people call these skyscraper chords. So the first example that we see in this piece actually is a ninth chord. And we know that composers like Debussy and Ravel love to write ninth chords, and the dominant ninth chord is a favorite. We see that right in the first measure of this example. But if we go a little bit further, there is actually a chord built up from the pitch A that includes the seventh, the ninth, the 11th. This is an A minor 11th chord. In this piece by Claude Debussy, called Midi d'Enfant, we see a beautiful structure of a 13th chord built on the pitch E. So we have the major minor 7 chord built up to the ninth F sharp. No 11th in this chord, but then the pitch C sharp, which is the 13th. We see that in the uppermost voice, and then we see the harp arpeggiation that outlines this chord throughout. These chords give a somewhat magical effect. And in this piece, called The Interrupted Serenade, again by Debussy from his first book of preludes, we see a very interesting example of a 13th chord, this time again built up from the pitch E. It includes E, G sharp, B, and D, the major minor 7 chord, and F natural, which is actually the flat ninth. And then he includes a C natural, which we could call the flat 13th because it's lower from what the key signature would be. And finally, we'll take a look at this example. This is a little bit later from the same piece, The Interrupted Serenade, and we see a 13th chord built up from the E flat pitch. And in this case, Debussy includes all the pitches. The E flat dominant 7 chord with the D flat as the dominant 7th, the 9th on F, the 11th on A, and the 13th on C.